All right, everybody, welcome to First Attack. I'm James Chen. How's everybody going? We really need to start getting like theme songs or something like that. Just play some theme songs while we start up. But welcome to First Attack. This is the show, of course, where I try my best to help ease a lot of the new players into fighting games and teach people how to play fighting games. And last season, I started off, very simple, but pretty quickly I moved ahead into things like, frame traps and option selects and such, because I got a lot of questions about them. But it kind of ended up pushing me a little farther and faster ahead than I intentionally wanted to. So, this season, my intention is to scale it back and really concentrate on just the absolute basics. So if you guys look at the title here of the show, actually, does it still say Tuesday show on your screen, or is it actually updated on yours?
Actually, it does say Tuesday show.
It does say Tuesday show. Okay.
No, not anymore, no.
Oh no, it's correct now.
It's good.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to be talking about moves today. I'm just going to be talking about this generic concept of moves. And I think it's something that's a little overlooked by players who play a lot of fighting games. They start understanding, they just get this inherent understanding of how things work and how things fit together in fighting games. And what I'm trying to do right now is kind of help people understand what a move really truly is. And so I'm going to try something new today, guys. So we're going to try some new technology here. Let's see if I can actually get this to work here. Ta-da! We have ourselves PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do here is talk about what is a move exactly. Right, so, when you play Street Fighter, you have all sorts of different kinds of moves, right? I mean, what do we have? We have normal moves, and let me know if you guys can't read this either. Hopefully the extra P's will help you be able to read this kind of stuff. But what is a move? Right, we've got normal moves. A lot of games have special moves. In fact, almost every single one of them have special moves. We have super combos, we have ultra combos, we've got hyper combos, X factor, crossover counter, alpha counters, burst, one more cancels, desperation. We've got all sorts of kind of moves in fighting games, okay? Now, that is not what I want to talk about today. That is not what I'm trying to focus on. There are so many different kinds of moves in fighting games, and it's so different between every fighting game. It's really confusing, and I don't want to talk about the different classes of moves because that's actually already getting a little bit more advanced than what we're thinking of. As a fighting game player, we need to really sit down and think about what a move actually is in fighting games, and I'm going to try to present moves in a completely different mindset. And again, this is something that we've learned as fighting game players over the years. And hopefully this will for those players who are brand new to fighting games, hopefully this will click in a little bit. So here we go. What is a move? A move is a commitment. This is where I'm going to focus on this entire episode. A move is a commitment. When you perform a move, you are committing to actually do the entire move from start to finish until it completes. Now, this is really important to talk about because a lot of the times this doesn't happen in a lot of other games. Moves aren't really necessarily something that you don't think of things as commitments. Okay, so let's think about it. Let's say you're playing a first-person shooter, right? And you're clicking the left mouse and you're trying to shoot at something. Well, when you shoot at something, normally you're firing your gun and you're shooting bullets, and at the same time you're strafing. you still have complete control over your character. You can still jump everywhere. You can still run everywhere. You're not putting yourself into any sort of commitment by shooting at something. If you're playing a game like, let's say, Mario Kart, okay, I bring back a lot of these similar games because these are all games that you can play competitively against other people. If you're playing Mario Kart and you fire off a red shell, you just fire the red shell and it's just going to keep going. You can keep driving, right? So even though firing a red shell could be considered a move, it doesn't matter. You still have control over your character. Even, for example, when you're playing a game, a MOBA game or an RTS game, you know, once you command units to go, say, march down this field, as they're marching down, if they run into this giant horde of, you know, enemies that are way more powerful than them, you can tell the army to turn around and try to run away or regroup or do something. In other words, the commitment is not there. The tricky thing about fighting games is that fighting games, every time you do a move, you're stuck in that move. This doesn't happen in very many video games at all, if you think about it. It's almost kind of like, I like to compare it to like the boomerang weapon in a lot of video games, where when you throw the boomerang, you can't throw the boomerang again until it gets back to you, right? That's kind of like how fighting games work, except you can't even move. Like a lot of games, when you throw the boomerang, I'm going to bring a super old school example like Goonies 2, back to old school NES days. But if you throw the boomerang, you can still run around, you can still avoid things. But in fighting games, this is a completely different situation. If I hit roundhouse, if I hit standing hard kick, my character is going to do a standing hard kick. And they are going to be stuck doing the standing hard kick until the standing hard kick finishes. If I decide to throw a fireball, I am going to throw a fireball, and I am going to be stuck throwing the fireball until the fireball recovers. This is why frame data is kind of important, because and it's really interesting because the frame data is an exact science, right? You have all these like startups and active frames and recovery frames or whatever like that. For the most part, it doesn't change for a move. Every time you do that move, it is going to last that long. If your standing roundhouse is 30 frames long, when you hit standing roundhouse, it is going to be 30 frames long. So, again, moves are a commitment, and this is really important to understand. Now, granted, lots of different moves have different levels of commitment. If you hit light attacks, for example, some of them last a total of 7 frames, 8 frames or whatever, so you'll do a quick move and you'll be done. But then other moves, for example, like a fierce Shoryuken from Ken, he's going to fly all the way up in the air and he's going to come all the way down. And so basically what happens is you're stuck in this huge commitment to this. So the reason why that I like to bring up commitments, well, let me go back really quick. So the reason why I want to bring this up is because most other games, I've talked about this before in previous episodes. In fact, I think in the first episode this season, I kind of hinted on this. Our tendency is to go into games and hit buttons, and hit a lot of buttons and such. And it's because there's very little consequence, right? Usually, for example, if you're playing League of Legends and you're fighting against an opponent and you guys are fighting each other, for example, in the mid lane, and they just take you out, they just destroy you, you probably made a mistake, and you understand that you made a mistake, and you're like, okay, now I have to sit there and wait till I recover until get back into the action. So you kind of have this concept of punishment, right? You get this punishment for making a mistake. The interesting thing about fighting games, however, is that you're trying to attack your opponent, so you got to do moves. But as soon as you do a move, you are locked into a position where you cannot defend yourself anymore. You are in a position where you basically have no control over your character. You can't do anything anymore. You are literally taking control away from your character by doing a move. So this is why whenever you see beginners play fighting games, the first thing they do is start hitting a lot of buttons. They start hitting a lot of buttons, and what happens is their character stops moving. They keep doing, for example, a standing heavy kick, standing hard kick over and over and over again, and an opponent who knows what they're doing is just going to come in and destroy them, because literally they are spending the entire game putting themselves out there to be killed. because all they're doing is hitting buttons, and they are just committing to moves that they should not be committing to. This is very important to understand in fighting games, and this is probably one of the most fundamental things that you have to learn when you play a fighting game, is that every time you choose to do anything, because you are committing to that action, you are stuck in that action. And like I said, this doesn't happen in a lot of different video games. In a lot of platforming games, when you jump, you can still guide your character back and forth. Like if you over jump a platform, for example, a lot of games have like a butt slam that you can hit a button and stop your jump and drop right onto the platform and such. This is not going to happen in fighting games. If you throw an uppercut and you go up into the air on your way up, if it's a mistake, it's a mistake. You've committed to that uppercut, and if you did not hit your opponent is going to be able to punish you. Now, obviously a lot of people who have played fighting games a lot more, who know a lot about fighting games, are going to be like, well, you know what, James, you're kind of wrong on this, right? What about X Factor? Well, you know, with certain normal moves, like I can just do 2 Rekkas with Fei Long and not do the 3rd Rekka, or I have bursts. You know, once I do an uppercut, if they block it, I can burst in the air, or I can Roman cancel and save myself and such. Yes, there are definitely exceptions to the concept of commitment, but they are all very specific, and they are very unique. You have to consider those kind of things very much the exception. But the rule that you need to fall under is the fact that whenever you do something, you're stuck doing that move. And so this brings up what I call the fighting game paradox. And this is kind of what makes fighting games hard to learn. Because in order to win, you need to do moves. You have to do moves, because if I'm not hitting any buttons, I'm never going to drain the life off of my opponent. And so, of course, I'm going to sit there. As soon as I learn to throw fireballs, I'm going to spam fireballs. As soon as I find a good standing heavy kick, I'm just going to keep standing heavy kick. But the problem is, because moves are such a commitment, even though they are what you need to win, they are also, at the exact same time, the thing that makes you vulnerable. So the very same tools that you are trying to use to win a match are going to be the exact same tools that will cause you to lose a match. And so, you know, how do you balance this out? So this makes no sense. So I'm sitting here telling you that you have to do moves to win, but if you do moves, you're going to lose. And so the question really comes down to is then, okay, well then, smart guy, how do I play a fighting game? What is the strategy to play a fighting game, right? And this is what fighting games are all about. This, to me, is the fundamental theory on fighting games. What you have to do when you play these games is you have to learn when to hit buttons and when not to hit buttons, when to do moves and when not to do moves. In the first episode this season, one of the things that I actually said to people on the stream was that, you know, Street Fighter is as much about not hitting buttons as it is hitting buttons. And that's basically one of the most important things about fighting games, is learning when to do moves and when not to do moves. So you have to attack, but when you do these attacks, you are committing yourself to these, I don't want to say attacks. When you're doing moves, you're committing yourself to these moves. And that's the whole thing about fighting games. The fighting games is about consequences. It's about doing something and living with the result of what has happened. The reason why I don't want to say attacks is because I've purposely been calling them moves this whole entire time, because moves kind of encompass a lot of different things. Move could be an attack, a normal move, a super combo, a special move, like I was saying a little bit earlier. But a move can also be something very defensive, like a Kuma teleport, right? A move can be something that's more of a mobile thing, right? For example, like in Persona, you have the quick hops, right? Moves are anything that take control away from your character temporarily, or force you to commit into something, whether it's defensive, offensive, or evasive. And so what you have to do is learn how to use the moves in all of the right situations. So the question really comes down to is then, how do you learn this? How do you learn when to do moves and when not to do moves? And actually, before I get into that, I'm going to take a quick break, really, and when I come back, I'll start talking about how to choose moves. It's a subject that I've kind of covered before, but I'm going to hammer this into a lot of people's heads. But I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get back. And so, hang on one second. Let me take care of this. All right, we'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to First Attack. I'm James Chen, and I'm going over very basics of moves here. I'm trying to cover, how you would think about using moves and how you actually should think about them, because it's something that not a lot of people think about when they play fighting games. Their tendency is when they learn how to do a special move, they spam it. When they find a good button they like, they spam that button, and they don't realize the consequence. They don't realize the concept of commitment to these moves when you perform them, and the fact that once you commit to them, you are leaving yourself vulnerable to be destroyed. Now, during the break, when I was looking through the chat, I saw a lot of people saying, I really, really hope James looks at the chat really quick. So if there's any question, please type it away right now. I saw some people, I think I saw a Nintendo Freak wanting to ask me a question or something. But go ahead and ask me a question on the stream, and I'll see if I can get to it before I go into the rest of this. I only have one slide left, but I had a last slide that I really wanted to do, but I completely forgot to write it up. But what would I consider not a move? Okay, so Nintendo Freak's asking, what would you consider not a move? I would consider something not a move as maybe something that you don't necessarily have to commit to. In a game like Marvel, for example, jumping and super jumping probably doesn't really count as a move per se, because it's just an extra method of transportation of movement, but you still have control over a lot of stuff. In a game like Street Fighter, a move like jumping, for example, is a little bit more of a move because you have committed yourself to a lot. And but the thing is, some characters like Viper, like Guy, can change their air trajectory, so there is a little bit of variation to it. And even with regular moves, for example, if Goken jumps in the air and does an EX Hurricane, he can kind of guide himself back and forth. So there's less commitment in that move than others. But again, obviously when trying to define moves, it's really, it gets gray in a lot of areas. But really what I'm just trying to get at, the point that I'm trying to drive home is the fact that there is a lot of commitment when you do stuff. And that's how you have to view a fighting game. When you're playing a fighting game and you're fighting your opponent, you have to understand that when you choose to do an action, you are putting yourself out there to be countered. You are putting yourself out there to be hit. You are making yourself vulnerable. So you really, really need to choose your moves wisely, and when you want to think about doing stuff. Now, Griffin asks a question, on average, how many normal moves do people use in matches? Do I need to know them all? It's actually a really good question, and it really depends on the characters. Some characters have a ton of moves, a lot of them that you'll never use. Other characters, you're going to need to learn them all. To be honest with you, you can probably play your character up to about 90% efficiency by learning the key moves for your characters. So, for example, by default, most characters have about, say, 30 normal moves, right? So in Street Fighter, I'll say in Street Fighter, with the caveat in Street Fighter, you got 6 moves while standing, crouching, close, neutral jumping, and angled jumping. So it's about 30 moves right there. You can probably get away with playing your character up to 90% efficiency by only really knowing about 33% of your normal moves, you can, like for example, if I play Cammy, I'm going to know standing roundhouse, I'm going to know low forward, I'm going to know jumping roundhouse, and jumping short as a cross up. But in order to get past that 90%, to get to that point where you've truly mastered your character, you're going to start learning a lot of little subtle things. For example, Cammy's jump heavy punch hits lower than her jump heavy kick. Her jump neutral light kick is a really good mix-up option off of neutral jump when you're really close to people. It can also instant overhead people. Her neutral jumping forward or neutral jumping roundhouse is really good air-to-air against things like Vega wall dives and such. Far strong with Cammy is a really good way to punish, for example, a whiffed lariat from Zangief. If you really want to take your character to the fullest level, you are really going to get to know all of your normal moves. However, when you are starting playing a fighting game, I know when you watch a lot of top players play games and you see guys use these buttons you've never seen before, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, I got to learn to use this. You know, try to resist that temptation to try to use every single normal move right away. If you want to learn your character, it's best to learn the fundamentals and the basics of your character. So if you stick with just those 33% of your normal moves to 50% of your normal moves, you're probably going to be better off at first. And then from there is where you start doing research, watching matches, going to forums, and then start picking up the details. Because the problem is, you're not going to understand the very subtle detail of why Mike Ross used jump strong at that particular instance with Honda until you get an understanding of your character, until you start playing your character enough to go, why do I keep getting into this situation where I cannot defeat this opponent's counter? Once you start understanding that, and then you see Mike Ross throw out this jumping strong out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, that solved the problem that I've run into. Then you're going to understand why to use that subtlety of that move. If you try to jump into the subtlety of that move right away, it's not going to help you because you're just going to be throwing it out at random. You're not going to understand why you want to use that move. So concentrate on the core moves of your characters. And a lot of the forums out there, like on Shoryuken forums, you'll actually see a lot of forums where they go over all the normal moves and be like, here's a good move, here's a good move. You can use those as starters, learn which normal moves are good, and then go from there. So I apologize, I've been talking a lot, so I didn't get to see a lot more questions. If there are any other questions that people would like to ask, please go ahead. Updated frame data for SF Cross Tekken. I know that they're trying to make it right now. There's efforts out there to do that, so that'll happen. And I do not have any plans to bust out the whiteboard today. I apologize. I'm just going with PowerPoint slides. That's my new thing going here. I like that question, actually. Blink Templar asks, what makes a move safe? I really like that question. To be honest with you, at the highest level, no move is safe. No move is perfectly safe. Everything can be countered, because that's another fundamental concept of Street Fighter. Everything can be countered. If there's something that cannot be countered, that character is too good, that move is too good, and everyone will use that character, and the game is broken, right? So, for example, M. Bison, Psycho Crusher, or Scissor Kick in Champion Edition Street Fighter 2. The second version of Street Fighter 2. Way too powerful. Bison was best character in the game because of those moves, right? So technically, no move is safe. But from a logical, scientific, fundamental standpoint of what makes a move safe, it's on block, it cannot be punished easily. And on whiff, it's very hard to whiff punish. That's a good way to describe a safe move. For example, in Third Strike, Chun-Li back fierce. Very safe move. Very hard to hit. Very hard to punish. A good crouching forward, for example, like Ryu's crouching forward. You block that. Can't really punish it in Street Fighter 4. But see, there's always exception, right? Chun-Li has a 2-frame super. She can punish a lot of things that are safe against 99.9% of the moves in the game. So technically nothing is 100% safe. But in general, moves that are hard to whiff punish and hard to punish on block are considered a safe move. Let's see. Any other questions related to the moves topic? I see people asking me questions, for example, on what's the figure on the right and stuff. That's Morgan and Lilith back there. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide in any case. Last slide that I have, and again, I wanted a fifth slide. I just did not get a chance to build it up. Master Zero's asked me a couple questions. What makes a character easy to learn? I will answer that question, and that is a character is easy to learn if their overall general strategy is very simple and very basic, that there's not a lot of options going around it. A character like M. Bison in Street Fighter 4 is a character easy to learn because you can concentrate on roundhouse, scissor kick, low short, and standing forward. I'm sorry, let me do that again. Standing hard kick, standing medium kick, crouching light kick, and scissor kick. And you can play a pretty sizable, decent game with M. Bison that way. Granted that knowing those 4 moves will probably get you up to about 60% of your character. And then to get them further than that, you're going to need to learn a lot more. But there's a lot of characters out there that if you only know 4 moves, you'll probably only get to about 15% of your character, right? And you're going to need to learn a lot more with your character to get good. Guy, Hakan, for example. Hakan has a lot of buttons that a lot of people don't know about. And if you think that only 4 moves are going to help you, you are never going to win with Hakan. And that's actually one of the reasons why not a lot of people know how good that character is because he's more complicated to learn. You need a larger subset of his moves to be effective with him, and that's what makes characters harder to learn. Characters that can be effective with a smaller subset of their moves, that is what makes a character easier to learn. And Green Savage, the reason why I switched from roundhouse to the heavy kick is because not a lot of people actually know the old school terminology, jab, strong, fierce, short, forward, roundhouse. I try to keep it more generic. Capcom these days uses the terms light kick, heavy kick, medium kick more often than a lot of stuff, than the old school terms. So I try to use those terms as much as possible. Okay, back to the slide. So the question I had is, let's go back really quick because why did I have this slide up? So the fighting game paradox. I talked about you have to do moves to win because the only way you're going to damage your opponent the only way to damage your opponent or avoid damage is through doing moves. So that covers the offense and the defense at the same time. But if doing moves is what gets you killed and makes you vulnerable, how do you know when to do moves? How do you know when not to do moves? Again, this is the building block of fighting games. This is all fighting games are about, is knowing when to do moves and when not to do moves. So I bring up my food analogy again from the very first episode. I'm not going to explain it again because it took me the whole freaking episode to do it last time. So basically, you just get yourself familiar into situations. You start building almost like a library of situations in your head so that once you get into a familiar situation, you start remembering, okay, after I blocked Ryu's fireball when I was... Okay, so let's say I'm an M. Bison player. I'm a dictator player. I'm in the corner. Ryu threw me into the corner, and he throws a meaty fireball at me. I get up, and I block the fireball. And then he throws another fireball. You're going to run into this situation a lot. Okay, this is not a unique situation. This is going to happen a lot. So Ryu throws a fireball at you, and you jump at him, and he uppercuts you because he recovers in time. Okay. The next time you get put in that situation, you jump at him again, and he uppercuts you again. Kind of odd. Every time I jump, I get uppercutted. So what you start learning is, jumping is not an option. This is not a move that you should be doing. If he throws another fireball and you EX scissor kick and you go through and you hit him, you're like, okay, I got out of that situation. So next time you get put in that situation, you will think to yourself, you know what? Last time I was in this situation, I could EX scissor kick through here. So if I see him throw another fireball, I'm just going to react and EX scissor kick. Then all of a sudden you get put in the situation you have no super meter. You don't have the ability to EX through there. So now you're like, I don't have this option anymore. So this becomes another scenario. This becomes another situation. And I really should keep using this terminology. It's the one that OS Ryan Hunter that's his Twitter name, Ryan Hunter, at OS Ryan Hunter. He made up this term called key moments. And so key moment is getting up, blocking a fireball, and Ryu throws another fireball, and you have meter. That's a key moment, because this situation is going to happen a lot. This key moment is going to happen a lot. A second key moment, an alternate to that, is I'm going to be in the situation with no super meter. So I can no longer EX scissor kick through here. So you're like, what do I try? What do I try? Let me try standing roundhouse. Let me kick. You get hit by a fireball. This is not good. Okay, I'm going to try to slide. You get hit by the fireball. This is not good. I jump again. You get uppercutted. This is not good. Again, you start building the situation, and the way you learn how to do the right move is just familiarity. You get into these situations over and over again. There's a reason why some players like John Choi can play Street Fighter 4 without that much practice and still do super well, because he's been put into situations over and over and over again, and by this point he's built up this giant library, so he knows all of his options. And that brings me to the next point. I said all of his options. And that's because I really want to make it clear to everybody that there is never one correct answer. When you get put in situation A, the answer is not do B. It's never going to be that simple. There are so many factors that can determine how you are going to react and why you are going to react with a certain move. So for example, let's say you are in that fireball situation and you have that meter, right? You have the ability to EX scissor kick through the fireball to hit Ryu. Well, here's the funny thing. What if I have 90% of my life and Ryu has 20% of his life? And that's my only EX bar. Now what happens is that there's so many outside factors involved in this. You know, I've talked about life and how much super meter I have, right? So there are some players, such as Sanchez, I think he's in the chat right now, who has basically said he loves blowing meter whenever he gets it. He just loves using meter, right? So sometimes it just depends on the person. So he's like, I don't care if I have 90%, my opponent has 20%, and I only have 1 bar of super, or 1 bar of EX moves. I'm just going to use it just because I want to get out of this situation. So he's going to get out of the situation. But now some other players might think to themselves, you know what, I would love to save this super meter for the next round. And I'm winning by so much that I am not going to use my EX scissor kick here. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to neutral jump over the fireball. I'm going to neutral jump over the fireball and pick my battle. Or I'm going to try to focus dash through the fireball and try to attack. So already here, even though you have a bar of meter, I've just said you can EX scissor kick through it. You can focus dash through it. You can neutral jump over the fireball. You can even throw out a head stomp and try to, confuse Ryu. You could throw out a devil's reverse and swing back. Try to get Ryu to whiff an uppercut. There are a lot of options, and none of them are more correct than the others. It always depends on the situation. And, like I said, it depends on the personality of the player as well, and it also depends on if you have a specific goal in mind. You'll hear a lot of the times when me and David are doing commentary, we'll say, oh, he did this combo to push him into the corner. He could have done this, but instead he chose to do less damage to get the opponent into the corner for more potential damage later. So in that situation, he could have done A, or he could have done option 1, which is do this big 400 damage combo. But he chose to go with option B, which does 200 damage, but pushes his opponent into the corner. Because what he's hoping is by getting that positioning, he can do way more than 400 damage than if he just landed the combo directly. So again, depends on the goals that you have. There's lots of different small goals. And so again, it's really just about experience. What I said in the first bullet item here, it's all about recognizing situations. It's all about familiarity. And the only way you're going to build up this library is by, 1, playing a lot. Playing a lot yourself. Playing all the time, right? Second way, watch a lot of match videos. See what the pros do in these situations. And 3, Go to forums and ask, when I get put into this situation, how do I escape this situation? What are my strategies? What are my options? This is very, very important. It's just to build up this experience so that once you get put into positions during a game, you know what to do. You know how to choose all these different moves. You know what you want to commit to. You know that I'm willing to commit to a neutral jump here. I know I am willing to commit to an EX scissor kick here because I know these are situations that work. I know that the chances of me getting punished for committing to these moves is very small. And, oops, that's the end there. I wanted to add one bullet point to the end of this. And, if you choose to play a lot online, or if you choose to watch a lot of match videos, it's really key to learn to recognize situations. These key moments, to borrow Ryan's term. I talked about, how M. Bison being stuck in the corner is a key moment. When you play these fighting games, you really have to recognize these key moments. A great example for this is when Ali Yoon visited the Arc recently. He played a lot of the Empire players at the Arc, and they streamed this, and Ali Yoon basically blew them all up with Cammy. There was one key moment that none of the players that were there seemed to take note that Ali Yoon was doing every single time. Well, not every single time, but a lot of the times. And that was every time they knocked Ali Yoon down, because they were a little nervous about the uppercut, they wouldn't throw an immediate attack. They would wait till Ali Yoon's Cammy got up, and then when they saw that there was no uppercut, they would attack him. That was a key moment there. And what Ali Yoon did repeatedly was do wake up, jump, EX dive. And this blew them up so badly. This killed them over and over and over again. You could hear them on the stream. They're like, oh my god, this character's so cheap. Oh my god, this move is so good, right? But they failed to recognize that this was happening the same moment every single time. So if you actually can pay attention to this, and this is hard to do. I'm not saying anything bad about any of the players that Ali Yoon was beating. This is really hard to do when you're playing. In fact, it's one of the hardest things to do when you're playing Street Fighter, is recognize these situations while you're playing. But fortunately, I was able to watch, and because I'm trained to look for these things while I'm watching, because of commentary, because it's just how I try to play these games, I noticed this, and it was a situation that kept happening. So, as a person fighting Cammy, you're going to have to learn to recognize that situation. If I'm not going to do a media attack, I have to be careful of jump, instant, EX dive kick. More importantly, though, if I'm a Cammy player, I'm now going to recognize this situation as when I get up, immediate jump, EX dive is really buff. It's really, really good. And then what's going to happen is you're going to go and play the game, and no one's going to get hit by it, and they're going to beat the crap out of you because they keep doing media attacks to you. And so you have to recognize that the situation is not just when you get up. The situation is when you've gotten up and you've gotten the opponent scared of uppercuts. So me and David, again, when we do commentary a lot of times, one of the things we like to say is, oh, I like that uppercut early in the round, just to let him know that he's willing to do that even without meter. That's the kind of thing, right? If you're a Cammy player and you do a lot of wake-up uppercuts early on with no meter to FADC out of it, your opponent's going to be scared of wake-up uppercut, and they're going to try to bait you out of that a lot. That opens the door for the jump EX dive kick when you get up. And so, again, I mean, this is going into specifics. This is a very specific example, but it's a great indication. It's a great illustration of how you look at moves, how you look at situations, and how you learn to recognize these situations. And that's the best way to play fighting games. And, it's going to be hard. Like I said, this is not something that you can do immediately when you start playing fighting games. When you start playing fighting games, like I said, find the moves that work for you. Find the moves that don't get you killed. And keep using those moves to the best of your ability. And then once you start establishing that base for your character, that you kind of know I use Ryu and fireball uppercuts, a kind of a decent strategy, then you start recognizing the specific situations. In this situation, I threw a fireball, and my opponent can't seem to jump over and punish me. But in this situation, he can. recognize the difference between the situations, and learn to play those situations correctly. If you're always throwing fireball at a place where the opponent can jump over and punish you, learn to fake the fireball in that situation, and then you can punish them. Stuff like that. So that's how you basically learn to choose moves. Experience, and making sure that you take note of the stuff that is happening. Learn to recognize the patterns, the repeated stuff that keeps happening. When I come back after this next break, I'm just going to go over one last little topic here, and then I'll probably call it an end for today. So in just a little bit, I will be right back after I fix this. Okay. All right, welcome back, everybody, to First Attack. I'm getting blown up here by my compatriots here. When I try to make LOL examples, because obviously I'm not very good at it. I haven't played it a lot, but I will learn. I will learn. I've been watching, and it's actually looks really fun and interesting. So I do want to play it. But last thing I want to talk about today, actually, and I did not get a chance to make the slides for these. The reason why this entire episode was conceived by myself, because I obviously did not ever think that this would be something to talk about. One of the things that I asked people to do for First Attack was to send me emails on why they think fighting games are hard. What makes fighting games hard to them? And a fellow by the nickname of Gentle Snow sent me an email. And basically, what he basically said, what makes fighting games hard is that sometimes your normal attacks are completely nullified by your opponent's attacks. Not blocked, but it's just if the attacks you entered the inputs for never happened. You know, there's like, sometimes you just hit a button and nothing happens and you just get hit. And the explanations that he's gotten for this are really obtuse. You know, people talk about priority and advantage and frame traps and all this stuff, and it just doesn't make any sense to him. So it got me thinking about that, and I just started thinking about it. It was just like, you know, there's this whole concept of moves. Whenever you're playing a shooter game, for example, if you're clicking on the left button to fire, you're just firing, and you keep firing bullets. You switch to a weapon, you fire something else. You throw a grenade, keep firing, and you just keep doing stuff. But in fighting games, there's this very interesting concept here of when you can't do normal moves, and that's so important. And that's what Gentle Snow's email made me realize and made me think about. And I really, really love this email that he sent me. Again, it's all these emails that you guys are sending to me about why fighting games are hard are really opening my eyes up to things that I'm overlooking. So please keep that up. UltraChenTV@gmail.com. Send us me more emails about why you think fighting games are hard. I'm getting a lot of stuff that's really opening up my eyes. And so expanding on this concept that Gentle Snow was talking about, how whenever you try to do a move, it just doesn't come out. One of the things that I want to mention about the whole concept of commitment is that that's actually what makes it really tough, is that if I throw out a standing roundhouse, while my roundhouse is going, I cannot hit a button and do anything else. While I'm whiffing an uppercut in the air, I can hit any button all I want. Nothing is coming out. My move cannot be performed anymore because I have gone into this commitment. And now you see why I'm trying to explain this concept of commitment so drastically, is because it's so important to understand that whenever you do a move, you're stuck. You cannot do anything else. But not only that, that there are other situations as well. Whenever you block a move, you can no longer do anything. It's really kind of funny because when you play a lot of fighting games, you're like, oh, well, I'm in block stun. I can't do anything. He threw a fireball at me and I blocked it. I can't do anything. To a person who's beginning and playing fighting games for the first time, if they get up and they block a fireball when they get up, they can't hit any buttons, they can't do anything. This is a really foreign concept. This is a really frustrating thing for them. They do not have the ability to touch any buttons or do any moves anymore because they are stuck. Maybe they can do an alpha counter if the game has something like that, a guard cancel kind of move. But you know what? That's not an optimal idea to do in a lot of those situations. It's the wrong move to do. So the only thing you're allowed to do will get you killed and waste resources. So it's like the completely wrong idea to do this. So it really, you have to understand this concept that doing moves, performing a move, is only possible when you're allowed to perform a move. I mean, it sounds silly to say that, but it's a really important concept. And then add on top of that, so not only when you're in the middle of your own move can you not do anything, when you're in the middle of blocks then you can't do anything. There is this really annoying concept that when the opponent starts attacking you and starts locking you down, every time you touch a button you get hit and you die, right? So fireball trap, Hadouken, you try to hit a button, your move doesn't come out, you get hit by a fireball. You block a fireball, you try to counter with a scissor kick, and you do a scissor kick, but you're still in block stun, so you don't scissor kick, you just sit there. And it just feels like it's like this completely helpless thing. You can't do anything, you have no control. And so, he says, so Snow basically sits here and says that, soon enough it can feel like it's pointless to try your moves. And that's literally what he said, and that's what triggered this kind of whole thought process to me. He's right. There are a lot of situations that you can get kind of put in this position where you're just like, I can't do anything. This is pointless. Everything I do loses, right? And so, how do you figure out what to do in this kind of situation with the priority, with the permutations of dozens of characters with dozens of move each, as he said. And again, it just comes down to experience, understanding, but just recognize the situation and learning what to do in these situations, finding out, going through all of your options. But most importantly, what I want to get across is that you will be put in these situations where sometimes 99% of your moves are not the correct thing to do. And I said that there's never a situation where there's only one right answer, but there are many situations where 99% of the stuff are the wrong answer. And you will be put into these kind of situations, and it's very frustrating. And a lot of times you'll just be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I cannot win this match because I just get locked down. Viper knocks me down, and then she just mixes me up, and I die. And it's just like, I don't know what to do. And it's a very frustrating thing. The only thing I can say is that understand that there is a counter. In almost every situation, there are some situations you're going to be put into where the only option that you have is to get hit or die. And those are very rare. But for the most part, there are always an option to escape. Like I said, that's one of the biggest rules of fighting games, is that there's nothing in the game that cannot be countered in some way, shape, or form. Because if there was, then that move is overpowered, and everybody would use it, and it would dominate the game. Everything can be countered, so don't be discouraged when you get to put into these kind of situations. Understand that other people who get put into this situation will not die the way that you are losing these rounds. That they know some way to figure it out, that they know that there's a trick to get out of this situation. And in this case, if you don't have access to YouTube, if you don't have access to forums to ask somebody, this is where it becomes a logic puzzle. Understand the property of moves, understand the property of focus attacks or hyper jumps or super jumps or rolls or whatever like that, and really just start taking the time to piece it together and figure out a way out. But the main thing is that understand that there is a way out of that situation, and if you look hard enough, you should be able to find it. And if worse comes to worse, try to find a match video or try to find friends who will help you experiment. If you have a partner, a training partner, go into training mode, play training mode all day until you can figure out a way out of it. There is an answer to it. So, yes, that is one of the things that makes fighting games hard, and it makes it really, really frustrating when you fight against a person who's better than you and gets you into those situations and you feel like there's nothing you can do. But you just have to believe that there is a way out, and through one means or another, figure out how to escape that situation. So that's going to be it for today, for this episode of First Attack. Following this is Level 3 Focus with Ultra David, of course. And again, keep those why fighting games are hard emails coming to me at UltraChenTV at gmail.com. Also, keep sending me your Execution Corner stuff. I love execution challenges. It's fun for me because I just love trying to do stupid combos. I'm one of those players out there that likes trial modes in these fighting games, okay? A lot of people hate them and they just think they're stupid. I enjoy torturing myself with those things. Also, of course, if you have any other questions related to community or just like concepts of video games, fighting games and such like that, ask jchensor. You know, put those terms in the subject line. Ask jchensor, Execution Corner, or why fighting games are hard. And hopefully I'll be able to get to those in a future episode. But definitely keep these questions coming. Again, thanks. Shout outs to Gentle Snow for basically inspiring this whole entire episode with his amazing question. Awesome question. But yep. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for Level 3 Focus with Ultra David. Peace out, everyone.